Have you ever done everything right all day? You ate clean, you skipped the soda, you even took a walk on your lunch break, and then you wake up the next morning, check your blood sugar, and it's high anyway. No cheat meal, no dessert, nothing that should explain it. If that's happened to you, I need you to hear this. The problem probably isn't your breakfast. It's not even your diet. It's something that happened the night before, hours after you thought your eating was already done for the day. And once you see what it is, you will never look at your evening the same way again. Stick with me, because by the end of this video, I'm going to show you the one evening habit that matters more than almost anything else on this list, and it costs nothing to fix. Hey, welcome to Prime Health Insights. I'm glad you're here. If this is your first time on the channel, we do one simple thing. We take real research on metabolic health and blood sugar, and we turn it into plain, honest information you can actually use, without the hype and without the miracle cures. If that sounds like your kind of channel, hit subscribe right now before you forget, because we post new breakdowns like this every week, and I don't want you to miss the next one. So let's get into it. Most people think of blood sugar as a daytime problem. You eat something, your blood sugar goes up, you manage it, and by the time you go to sleep, the job is done. But that's not how your body actually works. A huge amount of what your blood sugar looks like in the morning is decided long before you open your eyes. It's decided by what time you ate dinner. It's decided by how long you sat afterward instead of moving. It's decided by how much light hit your eyes at 10 at night. It's decided by whether you had a drink with dinner. All of that happens hours before sunrise, and yet it shapes the number you see on your meter or your monitor the second you wake up. Here's why this matters so much right now, especially if you're watching this in the United States. According to the CDC's most recent National Diabetes Statistics Report, more than 40 million Americans are currently living with diabetes, and that's about 1 in 8 people in this country. But here's the number that really gets me. Over 115 million American adults, more than 2 out of every 5 people, are living with prediabetes. And the CDC says 8 out of 10 of those people have no idea. They're walking around every single day with blood sugar that's already drifting in the wrong direction, and nobody told them, because the symptoms are so quiet you'd never notice on your own. So if you've ever wondered why your morning numbers don't match what you ate, or you're simply trying to stay ahead of a family history of diabetes, this video is for you. This isn't about scaring you. It's about giving you the piece of the puzzle almost nobody talks about, the evening piece. Let's start with something your body does every single night, whether you have diabetes or not. It's called the dawn phenomenon, and understanding it is the key to everything else in this video. Somewhere between about 3 in the morning and 8 in the morning, your body goes through a natural hormonal shift to help you wake up. Your brain signals the release of cortisol, growth hormone, and a hormone called glucagon. These are sometimes called counter-regulatory hormones because their whole job is to work against insulin. They tell your liver, hey, it's almost morning. The body's going to need fuel soon. Start releasing stored sugar into the bloodstream. In someone without diabetes, the pancreas hears that signal and quietly releases enough insulin to balance it out, so blood sugar stays fairly steady. But if you have type 2 diabetes, or you're insulin resistant, or you're pre-diabetic, your body doesn't respond to that signal as cleanly. The sugar gets released, but the insulin doesn't show up fast enough or strong enough to match it, so your blood sugar rises before you've even had a sip of coffee. This is completely natural. It happens to almost everyone to some degree. But here's the part that changes everything, and it's the reason I made this video. How strong that morning rise ends up being is heavily influenced by what you did the night before. Your evening routine either helps your body handle that natural morning surge, or it makes the surge so much worse that you wake up to numbers that feel completely unfair. So let's walk through the evening, hour by hour, the way it actually plays out for a lot of people, and I'll show you exactly where things start to go wrong. Let's say dinner happens around 8 or 9 at night. Maybe it's a work schedule, maybe it's just habit. Maybe the whole family doesn't sit down together until later. It feels harmless. Food is food, right? Except your body doesn't process food the same way at 9 at night as it does at 6. There's actual research behind this, and it's more specific than you'd expect. A team of researchers connected to Harvard and Massachusetts General Hospital ran a study published in the journal Diabetes Care where they had adults eat the exact same meal, once close to bedtime and once several hours before bed. What they found was that eating close to bedtime, when melatonin levels are naturally rising in your body, made a real difference in how well that meal was handled. Melatonin levels after the late meal were about 3.5 times higher than after the early meal, And in that same window, the body's insulin response was about 7% lower, while the blood sugar response was about 8% higher. That might not sound like a huge number when I say it out loud, but stretch that out over months and years of eating dinner late almost every night, and you can see how it adds up to a real pattern. The researchers even said this applies to somewhere around a third of people in industrialized countries who regularly eat close to bedtime. That's not a small, rare group. That might be you. Now here's where it gets more interesting, because melatonin isn't just about sleep. It's also involved in how your pancreas releases insulin. When food shows up in your system at the same time melatonin is rising, your beta cells, the cells in your pancreas responsible for making insulin, don't respond as efficiently. So the exact same plate of food, eaten 2 or 3 hours later than usual, can produce a noticeably different blood sugar response, not because of what's on the plate, but because of when the plate showed up. Let me give you a picture of what this looks like in real life. And I want to be upfront. This is a made-up example to illustrate the pattern, not a real patient. Picture a guy, we'll call him Mike, 54 years old, works a job where he doesn't get home until almost 8 most nights. By the time he showers, catches up with his family, and finally sits down to eat, it's close to 9. He's not eating badly. Chicken, vegetables, a reasonable portion. But his blood sugar in the morning has been creeping up for months, and his doctor keeps asking if anything's changed. Nothing on his plate changed. What changed, slowly, without him noticing, was the clock. Okay, so that's the first piece. But dinner timing is only half the story, because what you do in the 2 hours right after you eat matters just as much, maybe even more. This next part might be my favorite research in this entire video, because it's so simple it almost feels like cheating. After you eat, your blood sugar rises. That's completely normal. The question is how high it climbs and how long it stays up there. In 2025, a study published in the journal Scientific Reports looked at what happens when people take a short walk right after eating, compared to just sitting or resting. The people who took a 10-minute walk immediately after eating had a peak blood sugar of around 164 milligrams per deciliter. The people who didn't walk peaked at around 182 milligrams per deciliter. That's a real, measurable difference from 10 minutes of walking at a completely normal, comfortable pace, nothing intense, nothing that would even make you sweat. And this isn't a one-off finding. Other studies, including work published in the American Diabetes Association's own journal, Diabetes Care, have shown that a handful of short walks after meals, even just 10 to 15 minutes each, meaningfully improves blood sugar control over a full day, in some cases working about as well as other lifestyle interventions doctors recommend. Here's why this happens, in plain language. When you eat, your body sends that sugar into your bloodstream to be used as fuel. If you're sitting on the couch, your muscles aren't asking for much fuel, so more of that sugar just circulates in your blood, waiting for insulin to clear it out. But if you're walking, even gently, your muscles are actively pulling glucose out of your bloodstream to use as energy, almost like opening a second door for the sugar to leave through, one that doesn't even need insulin to work properly. So think about what most people actually do after dinner. They finish eating and they sit down. Maybe on the couch, maybe at the desk finishing up work, maybe just relaxing with the family. It feels earned after a long day, and I'm not going to tell you that you shouldn't rest. But that 30 to 60-minute window right after your last meal of the day is one of the most powerful, most ignored opportunities you have to influence your blood sugar, and most of us spend it sitting perfectly still. Now let's talk about something that a lot of people don't even think of as related to blood sugar at all, and that's the screen in front of your face for the last hour or two before bed. I'm not talking about blue light melting your eyeballs. That's not really the point here. I'm talking about sleep. Because what happens on your phone or your TV in the evening determines how well you actually sleep that night, and sleep might be the single most underrated blood sugar tool that exists. There's a well-known body of research, some of it going back to the sleep lab of a researcher named Eve Van Cotter, that has tested what happens to healthy people when their sleep gets cut short, even for just one night. In one controlled study, healthy adults slept a normal night, and then on a separate night, their sleep was restricted to just 4 hours. After that single short night, researchers measured their insulin sensitivity the next day using a very precise lab method called a clamp study. The result was that the rate at which their bodies could clear glucose from the blood dropped by about 25% compared to after a normal night of sleep. 25% from one bad night. Other studies from this same body of research have shown that even a full week of moderate sleep restriction, cutting sleep down to somewhere around 5 hours a night, produces a measurable, lasting drop in how well the body responds to insulin. This isn't a fringe finding. It's been replicated across multiple labs using multiple methods, and it's part of why sleep researchers now consider poor sleep to be a genuine, independent risk factor for insulin resistance and type 2 diabetes, not just something that happens alongside it. So here's the connection. If you're scrolling on your phone until midnight, or falling asleep with the television on, or staying up late because it's the only quiet time you get, you might be getting 6 hours of actual rest instead of the 7 or 8 your body needs. And that single missing hour or two doesn't just make you tired. It changes how your cells respond to insulin the next day, which means the same breakfast that used to barely move your blood sugar can suddenly hit differently, and you'll never connect it back to what your phone was doing at 11 the night before. Let's talk about one more evening habit, and I want to be really fair and balanced here, because this one gets exaggerated a lot online. Alcohol. If you have a glass of wine or a drink with dinner, here's what's actually happening in your body based on how alcohol metabolism works. Your liver's job overnight, among other things, is to release stored sugar to keep your blood sugar steady while you sleep and fast. But when there's alcohol in your system, your liver treats that as priority number one. It has to process the alcohol before it can do its normal job of managing your blood sugar. So for those first few hours, a sugary drink like beer or a sweet cocktail can spike your blood sugar because of its carbohydrate content. But later in the night, as your liver works to clear the alcohol, it can't release glucose as effectively. And for some people, that leads to a drop in blood sugar in the early morning hours, sometimes low enough to cause symptoms like waking up shaky, sweaty, or unusually hungry. This effect is well documented enough that many diabetes educators specifically advise people managing blood sugar to avoid drinking alcohol too close to bedtime and to never drink on a completely empty stomach. It's not that a glass of wine with dinner is some forbidden disaster. It's that alcohol changes how your liver behaves overnight at exactly the hours when your body is already juggling the dawn phenomenon we talked about earlier. There's one more piece to this puzzle, and it doesn't come from food or exercise or sleep at all. It comes from stress, specifically the kind of low-grade stress a lot of us carry through the evening without even realizing it. Checking work email one more time before bed, scrolling through the news, replaying an argument from earlier in the day. All of that keeps a hormone called cortisol elevated. And remember, cortisol is one of the exact same hormones your body naturally releases during the dawn phenomenon to raise your blood sugar in the morning. When your evening is full of low-grade mental stress, you're essentially asking your body to keep producing a hormone whose entire job is to raise blood sugar at the exact time of day when you want that system calming down, not ramping up. This is part of why so many people notice that a genuinely relaxed, easy evening, the kind where nothing stressful happens, tends to come with a better morning number the next day, even if the food was roughly the same. It's not in your head. It's your hormones responding to what your evening actually felt like. And this connects right back to sleep, because a stressed mind at 11 at night is a mind that takes longer to fall into deep, restorative sleep. And deep sleep is where a lot of your overnight hormone regulation actually happens. So an evening that's mentally loud, even if you're technically lying in bed for 8 hours, may not give your body the same quality of rest as a calmer one, which brings us right back to that 25% drop in insulin sensitivity we talked about from disrupted sleep. Stress doesn't just feel bad. It quietly works against you on a biochemical level, in the exact same window where everything else in this video is happening. Now, I want you to do something for me really quick before we go further. Down in the comments, tell me what time you usually eat dinner. Just the time. That's it. I read every single comment on these videos, and I'm genuinely curious how many of you are eating right around that 8 or 9 p.m. window we talked about earlier, because I have a feeling it's more of you than you'd expect. So let's pull all of this together, because here's the thing. Every habit I just described, the late dinner, the sitting still afterward, the late screen time cutting into sleep, the occasional drink too close to bedtime, none of them exist in isolation. They stack. If you eat dinner late and then sit on the couch and then stay up scrolling until your sleep gets cut short, you're not dealing with one small effect anymore. You're dealing with 3 or 4 small effects landing on top of each other, all in the same 8-hour window, right before your body naturally releases its own wave of blood sugar, raising hormones at dawn. That's why so many people feel like their morning numbers make no sense. It's not one thing. It's a stack of small things your evening routine builds without you noticing. So here's the part I promised you at the very beginning. The one shift that matters more than any single item on this list. If you could only change one thing about your entire evening, here's what the research points to as the highest leverage move you can make, and it costs you absolutely nothing. It's this: move your dinner earlier, even by just an hour or two, and then take a 10 to 15-minute walk within about 30 minutes of finishing your last meal of the day. That's it. That's the combination that shows up again and again across the research we just went through. Eating earlier means your body handles that meal while melatonin is still low and your insulin response is still working at its best. And walking right afterward gives your muscles a direct route to pull that glucose out of your bloodstream before it has a chance to sit there and climb. Do both together, and you're addressing the two biggest evening variables at the same time, with one small routine that takes less effort than scrolling through your phone for 15 minutes. And here's the part that ties it all the way back to where we started. Remember the dawn phenomenon? That natural hormone surge between 3 and 8 in the morning that raises everyone's blood sugar a little? You can't stop that surge. Nobody can. It's built into human biology. But a body that went into the night with a steadier, calmer blood sugar level because dinner was earlier and a short walk helped clear it is starting from a much better position when that morning surge hits. Instead of stacking a hormone-driven rise on top of an already elevated number from the night before, you're stacking it on top of a number that's already come down close to baseline. Same dawn phenomenon, completely different starting point, completely different result on your meter. Picture that same guy from earlier, Mike. Again, just an illustration, not a real story. Now imagine he shifts dinner up by even 90 minutes, eating closer to 7:30 instead of 9, and afterward he walks the dog around the block instead of sitting straight down on the couch. Nothing else about his life changes. Same job, same stress, same food most nights. But that one adjusted routine, repeated night after night, is exactly the kind of change the research we covered today would predict makes a real difference in his morning numbers over time. I want to be completely honest with you before we wrap up, because that's the whole point of this channel. None of this replaces your doctor, your medication, or your treatment plan. If you have diabetes or prediabetes, please keep working with your healthcare provider and don't change anything major without looping them in first. What this video gives you is context, the why behind numbers that can otherwise feel completely random and frustrating. Understanding that your evening, not just your morning, shapes those numbers is genuinely useful information. And it's information a lot of people never get told. So let's recap quickly. Your body naturally raises blood sugar in the early morning through the dawn phenomenon, driven by hormones like cortisol and growth hormone. Eating dinner late, close to when your melatonin starts rising, can blunt your insulin response and raise your blood sugar reaction to that same meal. Sitting still after eating keeps sugar circulating in your blood longer, while even a short walk gives your muscles a direct way to clear it. Cutting your sleep short, even by an hour or two from late screen time, can reduce your body's insulin sensitivity the very next day. And alcohol too close to bedtime can throw off your liver's ability to manage blood sugar smoothly through the night. Put together, an earlier dinner and a short walk afterward is the single combination that gives you the most control over all of it, for free, starting tonight. If this video helped something click for you, do me a favor and hit that like button. It genuinely helps this channel reach more people who need to hear this. And if you know someone, a parent, a spouse, a friend, who's been frustrated by morning numbers that don't seem to make sense, send this their way. It might be the piece of the puzzle they've been missing too. Subscribe if you haven't already, because next week we're breaking down another everyday habit that quietly affects blood sugar in a way almost nobody talks about, and you won't want to miss it. And before you go, I want to hear from you. Down in the comments, tell me this. Out of everything we covered today, dinner timing, the after-dinner walk, sleep, or alcohol, which one do you think is actually affecting you the most? I read every comment, and honestly, your answers help me figure out exactly what to cover next on this channel. Thanks for watching, take care of yourself tonight, and I'll see you in the next one.